On this video, we're going to be looking at price ceilings, particularly in the context of the labour and housing markets. It should perhaps be seen in conjunction with my video on price floors. First market that we're going to look at is the labour market, where there has been some suggestions that not only do we need a national minimum wage, but there should also be a maximum wage. One of the reasons for this is the feeling that perhaps senior executives in firms have paid far too much money. You'll notice there that the typical FTSE 100 CEO would have made the same amount as their typical worker for simply working 3 days as their workers work in a whole year. It's called Fat Cat Wednesday in 2021. It changes its day year by year. They earn roughly 119 times as much as their average worker, and that has changed quite significantly over the years. In about 2000 they earned 50 times. In the 1980s they earned 20 times, so it's gone up from earning 20 times the average worker to nearly 120 times the average worker. So they will take 34 hours to earn the same amount as the average worker would take in an entire year. There are also some equality and discrimination issues here. So in a survey of the FTSE 100 CEOs, if your name's Steve, you're going to crop up 7 times. Pete, 6 times. Dave, 6 times. If you're a woman, you're going to be there as often as Pete or Dave, and that actually went up in June 2020. It used to be you'd have more chance of being a CEO if you were Pete or Dave than if you're a woman. What if you're black? 0. Not a single black CEO in a FTSE 100 company. So there are equality issues. Broadly speaking, white middle-aged men appoint white middle-aged men to be the CEOs of companies. Now that's not a problem if you believe that white middle-aged men called Steve, Pete or Dave are far more talented than women or black and ethnic minorities. But probably that isn't the case, and probably there is a bit of a market failure there. Now there are some immediate issues. For example, how would the maximum be set? With the minimum wage, it's a certain amount per hour. For a maximum wage, would it be the maximum sum of money you could earn in a year? Would it be a multiple of the firm's median pay? Both of those have been suggested. If it's the latter, then if you're in a high pay industry like finance, then the CEO can still earn a lot more than if you're in a perhaps a firm like Primark. And of course, what would that multiple be? The second big argument looks at whether you actually need to pay that sort of money to attract that high talent. Well, again, it has gone up quite significantly since 1985. I'm not entirely sure I'm convinced by that argument. I mean, would they work slightly less hard? Would they disappear? Would they actually move out of supply if, say, they were paid 100 times the average pay, or 80 times, or maybe replaced by someone with a different gender or a different colour skin? But that's just me. From time to time, governments try to intervene in the rental market, primarily if they feel that rents are too high, and their aim is to protect low-income families or students. So the blue lines here show the market, obviously at a high price. More landlords are going to want to put their houses onto the market, but at a higher price. That's likely to dissuade people from moving into them. So we have an equilibrium price at PE and equilibrium quantity at QE. So the government, feeling this to be unfair, sets a maximum price below the equilibrium price. That lower price is likely to increase demand, but it's likely to mean that some landlords are going to withdraw their houses from the market, which could lead to that excess demand being forced onto the streets. So who might the winners and losers be? Well, the obvious winner would be those tenants whose rent is reduced. Losers, landlords, and those people who lose their house because the landlord has removed their house from the market. Other things we can look at, well, with lower rents, it may well be that there's better labour mobility, because it means that workers will be able to move from area to area more quickly. For example, London is a very expensive place to live, so if the rent comes down a bit, that could attract labour from other parts of the country. You're likely to get a lower supply of rental accommodation. Again, you can show that on the diagram. Landlords might accept the lower rent, but at the same time spend less on house maintenance, so it may be you get more damp or worse conditions, or it may be that they find other ways of getting the money, for example charging higher deposits or charging simply to give you the keys, that sort of thing. And that's it on price ceilings.